So, okay, according to a book titled Blacks in Gold Rush, California, the only concentration of African Americans in California was in Los Angeles. And of this decade, the 1850s, the best known of these men was Peter Biggs.
Mr. Biggs.
Who do you think you are?
Mr. Biggs.
Tough.
I hear Mr. Biggs tough.
Tough.
Who does he think he is? Mr. Biggs tough?
Going around breaking all these hearts. There's some speculation that myself I can't confirm or deny. They say that Peter Biggs may have been the first African American to live in Los Angeles, with his name appearing as early as 1847.
Yeah, I mean, that is tricky, again, using the term African American, because there were people of African descent who came originally.
That's right, yeah.
Not originally, but originally from Mexico to Los Angeles.
I was going to say, yeah, there was black people who were coming from Mexico, or they came from Spain. Yeah, it's tricky. I'm going to try to be as correct offensive as possible. I'm going to try to be as correct as possible. So he might have been one of the first guys here. His name appears as early as 1847. There said for sure by the time the census was taken in 1850, he was one of the 12 black settlers listed in Los Angeles, along with others such as Biddy Mason, who we mentioned in the jazz episode. She was the first black person to own land.
She's going to come up in one of my stories later.
In another publication.
So back off.
Don't say her name. Don't say her name again, please. I'm taking her to dance. And another publication titled Annals of California, from the arrival of the first white men to the Civil War era. It says that Peter Biggs was the first English-speaking black person in Los Angeles, because a lot of them came from Mexico, which might have been technically Spain at the time. Peter Biggs' story starts in Missouri, where he was a slave. In 1850, census lists his age as 35 and his birthplace as Virginia. He was sold to either an officer or a captain named A.J. Smith in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, during the Mexican War. The man who bought Biggs eventually freed him upon arrival in Los Angeles. Now, Biggs was a local character, and they had a nickname for him. Californios called him Don Pedro, and the Americans' nickname for him was incredibly racist. It was so racist, when I copied into Microsoft Word, it registered as a hate crime. Let's just say they called him Slur Word Pete.
The paperclip popped out and just shook his head.
Shook his head. He had a sign he was holding against me.
Hate does not make America great. Greg.
Thanks, Clippy. Cook. So let's just say they called him Slur Word Pete. In the readings of Pete, it says it so freely. It's just like, hey, they called him this. I'm like, stop that. Cut that out.
If Mark Twain can say it.
I'm going to smack that Huckleberry Finn right in the mouth next time he wants to say that. Okay? Smack him in the mouth.
I would knock the teeth out, but they're long gone.
All that kid's got to do is eat some gum and out. Stupid hillbilly.
Fence painting bumpkin.
I think you're thinking of Tom Sawyer.
He tricked him into painting his fence.
They tripped some rube, some country.
Yeah, Huckleberry Finn.
Huck Finn got Tom Sawyer.
What do you mean, Cuck Finn? Huckleberry Finn. Huckleberry Finn.
That's what I call the city boys. Mr. Biggs saw that Los Angeles had a lot of surly-looking gruffs walking around, and noticed that the town had no real saloon to get a trim, to get their ears lowered. So he opened up the city's first...
Ears lowered? Is that an expression for getting a haircut?
Yeah.
Why would your ears be lowered?
Oh, because it was...
Barbers were also dentists, and they figured they might as
They're
well.
Also surgeons.
They were also ear doctors.
I mean, everybody was Frankenstein back in the day, right? Everybody before 1950 was Frankenstein.
He's just the only one they talked about. Like, there were a bunch of people named Jesus back then. He's just the one they talk about.
Pete Biggs opened up the city's first barber shop, the New Orleans Shaving Saloon, which is just about as confusing as Milwaukee beer from LA, California. He was also the city's first barber and bootblack, and because he spoke English, the only...
That's someone who shines shoes, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I also assumed the same thing, yeah. The only English-speaking barber in Los Angeles. And because of that...
What were the other languages?
Spanish, I would want to say.
Peruvian,
I would have assumed Spanish. There was only...
So. They spoke prospector.
See, that's the thing. I don't know if he was the only English-speaking barber or the only English-speaking black man here. I read both.
Either way makes sense.
I read things and I'm like, that can't be true. I don't know how to confirm.
A black barber?
Because he was the only English-speaking barber in town. He was the only barbershop that could accommodate Americans. He was very popular because of this. I read somewhere that he knew virtually every resident in Los Angeles because there was like 6. He rented...
And only 3 of them had hair.
He rented space at the Bella Union Hotel on Main Street near Temple, which is now where the Fletcher Bowdrin Square is. It used to be like a big mall type situation. It was just like there was a saloon across from him. There was just like the city plaza. Mall. Shut up.
It was a Westfield.
He charged 50 cents for shaving and 75 cents for a haircut. What am I, a millionaire?
Shaving a haircut, 2-bit.
New Orleans Shaving Saloon was a one-chair barbershop, which is one of my favorite phrases, and he only served men. Trump's New America. He marries a Mexican woman named Dolores Valenzuela and had a daughter, Juana Margarita, which it might be a song.
That must have been a prank call. You want a what?
And during the 1860s, I kept reading this, but I don't really necessarily know what it means. He had a monopoly on the barber business in LA, which probably means he had like
he was
a
the
couple.
only one. Yeah, he was the only person who owned scissors.
I keep welding 2 knives together and I keep wounding everybody and they get infected and they die. A French man Frenchman. A Frenchman moved into town named Felix Seigneuret, who was barber by trade, and Pete was embarrassed because his skill wasn't that great. So he began reducing his prices to 12 cents a shaving, 25 cents for hair cutting. Here's a funny story about Felix Seigneuret, the other barber in town. He led 300 vigilantes to a jailhouse, overpowered the sheriff and deputies, dragged a man out named Lachey. It's another Frenchman. They took him to Temple on High Street and they hung him. A barber did this. And to his credit, Lachey...
Sweeney Todd?
Yeah. He had shot a man in the field over a water dispute, and this was the pre-LAPD vigilante mob rule days, but still.
Barbers were king.
Anyways, Pete Briggs started a family and was a businessman in early Los Angeles, and I can't seem to find more on him after this point. First barber in LA.
All right.
I like him.
Yeah.